Hello and welcome back to Holiday Week here at the Damage Report. Just 2 more shows to go until we all get to kick back and pretend that we don't live in hell. And in that regard, in terms of pretending that, let's bring someone who definitely makes my life much less hell. That would be Ana Kasparian. How's it going, Ana?
Hey, what's up? Happy to be here. And
Glad
you
to have you
definitely
here.
make my life less hell as well, John.
Nice. High praise from Ana Kasparian, the Salt Dragon. Anyway, glad to have you here. We don't often get to have you on the show. You're super busy and everything, but I always really look forward to it. I try not to ask too often, but you were very nice to come on today. And we've got some important news to talk about. We've got updates on the vaccine, on the stimulus bill. And if you've been looking to protect yourself from COVID, and for some reason masks aren't enough, we've got a stupid invention for you to close out the day. So a couple weeks ago we talked about the slap mask. That was dumb. This is gonna make that look like the best idea ever. So stick around for that. It'll be coming a little bit later on. Heads up to the team, we might be out of sync. Maybe, we'll see. Can't really tell. Anyway, for those of you who are already here, whether on Twitch or YouTube or wherever you are watching on the app maybe, feel free to like the stream and share it so that people know we're live. And as we go along, if you want to comment along, send us super chats and all that, Ana and I will respond as we go. And with that, Ana, why don't we jump into the first piece of news of the day?
Let's do it.
So yesterday we had the stimulus bill and an impending vote, and apparently, hey, what do you know? They were able to pass it, even though it was 5,000 pages long and they had just a couple of hours to read it. So Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was tweeting about the fact that that's insane, that effectively isn't governance, it's hostage taking to push it through and to also tie effectively the ongoing continuation of the government to it. So she voted against a rule paving the way for speedy passage, but did eventually vote yes on the coronavirus aid of the package, which now leaves us with 5,000 pages, a wheel of time of government little details and bits of pork barrel spending to go through. We've got a few details of that we're gonna get into in a second. Overall, Ana, though, we haven't yet gotten to speak about the package itself. Overall, what do you think with what we ended up with?
Well, as we're learning more and more details about the various handouts that are given to people in positions of privilege and what the priorities have been among our members of Congress, I think it's understandable for people to be enraged by this so-called relief package, which was attached to the annual government budget. So there are all sorts of insane tax deductions that are available for wealthy people, for business owners. As many of you probably already know at this point, there is a lack of robust relief for ordinary Americans who are really dealing with the ramifications of this, the economic ramifications as well as the health ramifications of this pandemic. And what this really signals to me, and I think anyone who's been paying attention, is that our members of Congress do not fear us. And when I say us, I'm not talking about people in the media. I'm specifically talking about ordinary Americans. They don't fear their own constituents. It appears that they certainly fear their corporate donors, because there are certain goodies there for their donors. You can see that lobbying has taken or made a huge impact on this. But overall, I mean, it's beyond shameful to see how Congress is willing to neglect the best interests of their own constituents in favor of the rich and the powerful. We see this over and over again.
Definitely, and yeah, as you said, and as you and Cenk already started previewing yesterday on the Young Turks, there's a whole bunch of nonsense in here. And so I wanna just touch on a few bits of it. Some of it you already know, I'm gonna add on some additional stuff. And look, it's a little bit complex in that the coronavirus aid bill is being bundled with these other big bills. And so some of the initial stuff that people were saying where like the COVID bill has such and such isn't technically true. It's not technically part of that. It's part of the overall funding. But that said, this stimulus bill could have been bigger. It could have been 1% bigger, it could have been 50% bigger, it could have been twice as big. These are all options that were talked about at various points. And so whether it's literally in the text of the bill itself, this is about where the government's priorities are and where it's willing to put its dollars. And you can't say that we can't afford to give people more money if at the same time you're passing, even if it's technically in other bills, money that are going to people who clearly don't need it. We're gonna give you some great examples of that. First, though, I do wanna mention that some of the stuff that's been stuffed in here is not strictly just about funding. There's also some regulations, new consequences for certain types of actions. These are significant, and I'm sure we'll go into more detail at some point. But for instance, Evan Greer of the digital rights group Fight for the Future pointed out that one stipulation in this bill threatens ordinary internet users with up to $30,000 in fines for engaging in everyday activities such as downloading an image and re-uploading it or sharing memes. Basically, there's all these things that have to do with online and digital rights that theoretically people could run afoul of that nobody would have expected would have been being passed during pandemic relief funding. So that's the first thing that jumps out. I don't know how many other things like this are in there because again, it's 5,000 pages and nobody who voted on it read it. So, but we're gonna get into the funding in a second, Ana, but I am very worried about other things like that. Just a couple of sentences that theoretically could criminalize all sorts of behavior and most people might not even know about it yet.
Yeah, I mean, since this was a massive bill, different priorities kind of grouped into one massive piece of legislation that costs about $2.3 trillion. There were opportunities for dishonest actors within Congress to slip in certain provisions that could have a lasting negative impact on ordinary Americans. So what you're referring to is something that the film industry and even some film industry related unions pushed for, which would make what they're referring to as illegal streaming a felony as opposed to a misdemeanor. And so I love the examples that were given in the graphic that you just read, because someone might be engaging in something completely innocent and something that they've been doing. Let's say an independent streamer on Twitch or YouTube happens to use a piece of video that could be protected under fair use, by the way. This language in this legislation really starts to muddy the water as result in regard to what people can and can't use on their own programs. And so the argument has been, by the way, from people like Tom Tillis, a Republican senator who slipped this into the legislation, that like, oh, no, don't worry about it. This isn't about private people. This is about commercial use of copyrighted material. But in using that kind of language, he's trying to paint a picture of like massive corporations that are taking advantage of copyrighted material. That is not who this is gonna affect. This is going to affect people like us who do independent news shows and like to bring in, let's say, images or video elements in order to help present the story and tell the story to our audiences. Yeah. Independent news outlets do not have the resources to fight these copyright battles. They certainly don't have the resources to make the case for fair use. And oftentimes, they're gonna be crushed as they have been in the past through this type of legislation. So I'm terrified about what this means for people like us and other individuals who put together independent content.
Yeah, and the little bit of aid that the government is willing to give us is tied to all of this stuff. Again, like AOC said, effectively it's hostage taking. It is putting these representatives in a very difficult position. Rashida Tlaib ended up voting against it. She was one of only 2 Democrats who did. And look, her argument for that is online. Look, I am sympathetic to the argument. The aid is inadequate. It's being tied to these other things. At the same time, people are really suffering. This is almost swore there. This is the bad situation that our government puts us and the actual good, honest people in government in all too often. That said, let's break down a little bit of the insanity that is in this bill. So, for instance, we have the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Act. Should it get passed, the legislation would allow the Horse Racing Integrity and Safety Authority to come up with and implement horse and racetrack safety standards at a national level. Horses involved in racing would be barred from receiving painkillers, and thank God, how many letters do I have to send before they finally make that change? But anyway, that's in there, as well as a tax cut for those who own certain types of racehorses. That seems necessary ever, and especially in something having to do with a pandemic. Let's see, Bernie Sanders pointed out some of the big like handouts that were put in here, including $2 billion for Space Force. Literally the only thing I've ever experienced that has to do with space that I don't want to ever hear anything more about. But now billions of dollars are going there. Billions, by the way, are going to the border wall. We just did a story a couple days ago about how much money Biden can save by halting construction. No, we're gonna throw a couple more $1 billion in the waning days of the Trump administration to this pointless, stupid, xenophobic wall. We've got that. There's little things like, as I alluded to in the title of the stream, the COVID bill bans appropriations to the group ACORN, which hasn't existed for years.
This is insane.
It isn't a thing. And it still bans funds to them. Bans that originally came about for absolute nonsense reasons. I've got a few more. Anna, what do you think so far?
No, I mean, it's just, this is so ridiculous. But again, I mean, I think that we need to address the core question here. Why is it that our members of Congress do not fear us? They don't. They're not worried about consequences for this awful piece of legislation. They're not worried about a general strike. They're not worried about unrest as a result of their unwillingness to provide the economic relief that people desperately need right now. I mean, they extended the eviction moratorium till January 31st. They actually did cut back the amount of time people would receive unemployment benefits. Originally, they were negotiating 16 weeks. They decided to pare that down to 11 weeks, meaning that most Americans are still going to suffer from job loss once this unemployment program runs out of money. Because remember, most Americans aren't even gonna have access to the vaccine until late spring, early summer. And so to pretend as though there's gonna be this robust economic recovery in time for people to get back to work before the unemployment benefits run out is absolutely ridiculous. No one believes that. But again, we need to figure out what needs to be done to organize people. I really think that we do need to find ways to unionize massive companies like Amazon, for instance, and organize basically general strikes, rolling general strikes that challenge capital, that challenge the very donors who have bribed our politicians to prioritize their interests as opposed to the interests of American workers. So you might have seen general strike trending on Twitter, and we need to have real debates and discussions about how we can make that happen. Because unless we challenge capital, they're not gonna fear us. They're not gonna care about screwing us over, and they're constantly going to prioritize the interests of the wealthy and the powerful. And by the way, their own interests. Congress allocated another $5 million for a specific clinic that takes care of members of Congress around the clock. So they doubled the budget for this exclusive clinic. But when it comes to everyone else, when it comes to hazard pay for frontline workers, Congress essentially gave them the middle finger.
You need to either be a senator or a member of the House, or you need to own a racehorse for us to have any reason to believe they're gonna care about you at this point. Little rando things I just want to mention to close this out. The COVID bill has a stipulation having to do with exerting influence over the choice of the next Dalai Lama. So that's interesting. For some reason, that's in there. I think you might have talked about on TYT yesterday, a big old chunk of money, $500 million going to the Israeli military, a big portion of that being for a specific form of short-range ballistic missile defense program. Definitely has to do with COVID. Now, theoretically, were COVID to mutate to a form that could be shot by a short-range ballistic missile, I would be the biggest advocate for this in the world. There's no evidence that would actually work yet, so it seems like a big waste of money when people are suffering. And there's a lot more where that came from. I'm sure on the Young Turks later on, Anna is gonna be breaking down even more of the insane inclusions in this. But when so much is missing, we are well within our rights to get incensed about the stuff that they actually included. God, our government. Anyway, let's read a few comments for the audience before we move on to other news. I did see a question on Twitch. Someone asked if there has been a name chosen, an honorary dragon name for Christian. Let's see about that. Maybe Anna can make a suggestion. Hopefully a PG one. But anyway,
I was thinking about a bunch of R-rated ones. I won't share. Don't worry.
I'll deal with R. That's not what I was worried about. Anyway.
All right.
Okay, in the super chats, Jay Fergie says, Skater Dragon here. I know you don't I know you don't sports, John, but I'm playing in my first fantasy football championship this week. Wish me luck. Hello, Salt Dragon. P.S. Still waiting for a Dragon versus Kraken design. By the way, news for you. If you're playing in your first fantasy football championship this week, neither of us sports. But anyway, no, do well. Hope that you do well. I would do like a fantasy, I don't know, MCU thing or something. That'd be fun. Or maybe for the next season of The Mandalorian. Anyway, art meme. By the way, Anna, is there any chance that you've watched any of The Mandalorian?
No, I don't know what that is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just asked because I know that you ended up being a big fan of Lord of the Rings. I thought, you never know. Okay, anyway.
So is it a movie or is it a series? I mean, I'm open to it. Oh, it's a show.
Disney
Okay,
Plus
Netflix.
Show. There's been 2 seasons. If you've Disney Plus, if you've seen anything about a baby Yoda, that's where that comes from. Anyway.
Nice.
Art meme says happy birthday, Dragon Daddy, or Daddy Dragon. Actually, I prefer Daddy Dragon.
Oh, it's your birthday?
Disgusting. No, it's not. It's not.
Oh, I was like, man, I'm a bad friend. Like, I think I got the date wrong, but okay, good.
In a couple months. Thank you for all your work, and may I be graphic dragon. That's true, unless depends on how beyond R-rated Anna's comes up with. That might have to be labeled graphic dragon. Anyway, thank you. Rob Shively says, I was late to the pre-show. However, my wedding was on July 4th and began with a speech from Independence Day until my friend corrected himself. That's pretty funny. We were talking about some of the nerdy elements of my wedding on the pre-show. Rob Shively says, back when you were both single, I totally shipped you because you were clearly close. These days, I just love your friendship. It's beautiful. Aww. Thank you, Rob Shively.
Yeah, I will say, like, we have a genuine friendship. Like, I really treasure John. Like, he's such a good person. So much so that like, even like hearing your name on our show time to time, we'll be like, oh, John, like John's such a good person, guys. Like, you don't understand. This industry is full of goblins and goons and awful people who are just interested in themselves. John is not one of them. So I truly value him, and I hope you guys too.
Thank you. Everyone watch out for the goblins and goons, which is gonna be the title of my next novel, actually. Anyway, finally, the progressive carpenter says to Anna, as a career carpenter, it brought me so much joy to see you take a woodworking class. I love hearing about your DIY projects too. This trade is meant to be shared with people. Please pursue that passion. Love you both.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I'm so jealous of your skills. As a professional carpenter, you know so much that I want to learn. So my goal for next year is to find ways to lessen my workload so I can focus on personal interests, which is difficult to do. Putting together a 2.5-hour show every day is a monster task.
It is. With that said, why don't we proceed with our less than 2-hour show as we launch into more news? Okay. For a very long time, Joe Biden and Lindsey Graham have been this sort of mythical tale across the aisles of friendship from 2 different worlds, almost like Romeo and Juliet. And there's been a bit of fraying in that friendship recently, with Biden saying Lindsey's been a personal disappointment because I was a personal friend of his, obviously having to do with the fact that Lindsey Graham values being a hack for Donald Trump more than his friendship throughout his life with Joe Biden. So he's disappointed with him. Well, now Lindsey Graham is sort of responding. Will he acknowledge reality, acknowledge that Joe Biden won in an election that wasn't even close? Take a look.
Well, I think Bill Barr did a great job as Attorney General. He tried to clean up the Department of Justice and the FBI that became a mess. The Crossfire Hurricane debacle, Durham is still investigating that. But as to Hunter Biden, you have a U.S. attorney in Delaware that's looking at tax fraud, but he's not looking at his overseas dealings, Hunter Biden's dealings in the Ukraine and China and other countries. We had banks report suspicious activity reports went from American banks where Hunter Biden and his partners were doing business to the federal government, being concerned about the potential for money laundering. I want somebody to look at all the overseas activity of Hunter Biden, see if it's compromised the foreign policy of President Biden if he gets to be president, and the guy in Delaware doesn't have that mandate. So I respectfully disagree. If we're up to me, I would take the U.S. Attorney in Delaware and give him the entire Hunter Biden portfolio so he could look at everything Hunter Biden did throughout the world, which is pretty massive industrial size influence peddling. I think we need a special counsel because I worry that what Hunter Biden did may have compromised our ability to effectively wage foreign policy.
Okay, so I apologize for making you listen to that much of Lindsey Graham all in once, but that is Lindsey Graham talking, not only like saying if Joe Biden gets to be president, so he is still continuing with this myth that it's in question or that it could be overturned, but also saying, no, what we should be focusing on as a country right now is the fact that Hunter Biden did something. And like the idea that he would continue to spread this utter nonsense about Joe Biden's family when he has been friends with Joe Biden for literally decades. Anna, the reason that I want to talk about this isn't because I find their friendship to be particularly interesting. What I'm hoping is that this will help to open Joe Biden's eyes. That's who Lindsey Graham is. And Lindsey Graham was like the guy that was most likely to potentially work with you because supposedly you have this personal connection and that's supposed to be worth something, right? Well, if it's worth something to anybody, he's the guy you've known the longest and worked with for so long. Well, look at that guy. They are fully invested in all of this conspiratorial nonsense, even to the point of their being willing to end American democracy. I am hoping that there will not be this wasted 2 to 4 years like Obama had, where he seriously thinks that he can work with these people. Joe Biden needs to see that these people are out of their mind and they can't be reached.
He won't. And one piece of evidence for that, recent piece of evidence, and let me just be clear, this isn't just about Lindsey Graham. Now, will Joe Biden wake up to the fact that Lindsey Graham is a traitorous person who should be investigated for trying to dismantle our democratic process and everything that's protected under our Constitution? Yes, Lindsey Graham and people like Lindsey Graham in Congress who have enabled Donald Trump, who have advocated for tossing out ballots in battleground states, as Lindsey Graham has, should absolutely be investigated and should suffer the consequences for that. But if you take a step back and you look at the bigger picture, this, I don't even know if it's his theory of change because it's not change. This idea that he can reach across the aisle and negotiate with the very people who have been denying that he won this election, he's absolutely wrong. Like, look at the New York Times. They just recently reported about how Joe Biden was very much involved in the stimulus negotiations, urging congressional Democrats to work alongside Republicans in order to get a deal done. And essentially what he has taken from this awful stimulus package, or I hate saying stimulus because it doesn't really stimulate anything, but this so-called relief package is, would you look at that? I can get Democrats and Republicans to negotiate and come up with a bill that they both agree on. But the question is, what do they end up agreeing on, right? I mean, if you're just going to be a Democrat who encourages other Democrats to constantly concede to what corporate Republicans want, well, I'm not interested in those kinds of deals because those deals actually hurt the American people. I think that there's this obsession with reaching across the aisle and negotiating for negotiation's sake, instead of really talking about whether the end product is in the best interests of ordinary Americans, of American workers. That's where the discussion needs to be. And I don't think that Joe Biden has learned a damn thing. I think that really, if we were to go back a few decades, Joe Biden's politics mirror that of moderate Republicans. He's not a he's not a progressive, that's for sure. And he's unapologetic about that. And what we need right now is progressive policies. Polling indicates that the majority of Americans want progressive policies to be fulfilled. Biden's not gonna do that. Nothing will fundamentally change under his presidency. That's what he promised his donors.
I hope, I think that you're almost certainly right. I think the long shot hope that I'm expressing is that if they make this intensely personal about Biden's son, I would rate that as high tier on the things that have at least a chance of getting through to him. Like, it's not like them, like the Republicans all saying we're gonna have austerity going forward. We gotta worry about the deficit or whatever. That's not gonna get through to him. Like talking about the only thing we're gonna work with is, on reform to Social Security. That's obviously not gonna clue Biden into who these people are. But if they launch sham investigations of his family members, hopefully that personal element will get through to him, if anything will, but we'll have to see. We'll have to see.
I do want to just add one more thing. I do find it fascinating that some of the people in the media who have built their careers on the so-called Russiagate narrative, essentially arguing that, the Mueller investigation was nothing, it was just a sham, this and that. They're now like latching on to the Biden investigation and arguing that that's legitimate. I mean, there's been a lot of revealing moments since Trump got elected. I will say that.
Yeah, it makes your head spin every day. By the way, want to mention a bit of breaking news. It's apparently happening right now. We have been waiting to find out who is going to replace Kamala Harris as California's ex-senator, and we now know Alex Padilla has apparently been tapped to become the new senator. I'm gonna say that I have a little bit of familiarity of Alex Padilla in terms of the work, previously at a state level, California. In terms of overall politics in particular areas, I can speculate a little bit, but we're gonna need more time, obviously, to go through past statements about a wide range of different issue areas. I will say that my gut reaction is there were a lot of people on my list that I would have loved to have seen. I think it would have been great to see, really, you can take your pick. It could have been a Katie Porter, it could have been a Ro Khanna, it could have been a Barbara Lee, it could have been a Karen Bass, it could have been a lot of people. It could have also been worse people. I mean, what if he'd chosen Garcetti to be the next senator or something like that?
Oh my God.
You didn't even think about that,
Garcetti's
did you?
gotta go, guys.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Every time it's triggering for me. Hearing Garcetti's name is actually triggering for me. Just when you guys don't understand how bad his governance has been. It's been awful, awful. I mean, you can see it as soon as you step outside your door and you see massive homeless encampments. He's awful.
Yeah, I know that there are people who like Padilla. I understand that, and we're gonna go, and I'm gonna find actual evidence in these areas and different areas, and we'll do some updated coverage tomorrow. But it is disappointing. There were some opportunities to, imagine all of those people that I mentioned would have been good, but just imagine Katie Porter in the Senate, like what she could get done. It would have been amazing. Or Ro Khanna, imagine elevating another anti-war voice like Ro Khanna's to a prominent position in the Democratic Party, acknowledging that, there's always these sort of self-fulfilling prophecies about rising stars. It could be a rising star. He on the House side helped to invoke the War Powers Act, which hasn't been done in literally decades. Someone who actually delivers could be a rising star. Instead, it's like, hey, Pete Buttigieg raised a bunch of money. I guess he's a rising star or whatever. So frustrating.
Yeah, but that's exactly right. I mean, when you look at the history, the career of someone like, let's say, Nancy Pelosi, do you think that she, rose to the top in congressional leadership because she's a master legislator? Do you think she's actually some fantastic technician that's actually gotten good things done for her constituents? No. She was a favorite by the Democratic Party because prior to getting elected into Congress, she was one of the top fundraisers for the party.
Yeah.
It always goes back to the money. And I mean, when you really talk about why we're a democracy and have a democratic process in name only, it's because we're infected by this virus that legalized bribery through the Supreme Court and essentially it communicates to our lawmakers that the desires of their corporate donors happen to be more important than doing the right thing for their constituents.
Yeah.
They just have more sway.
Yeah, so we're gonna see, but apparently it's chosen. Alex Padilla, I guess, will be the next senator. We'll see. And you know what? If it turns out that Alex Padilla's politics on things like healthcare and stuff like that is pretty much what my gut is probably saying it's going to be, especially to be chosen by California's governor, then we can start figuring out who might primary Alex Padilla at some point. That might be exciting. We'll see about that. Anyway, until then, let's move on with other news. Thank you to both the producers and people in Twitch who were keeping us appraised of the breaking news. I can't like be on Twitter or whatever, but I appreciate you making sure that we don't miss anything. Okay. Donald Trump still got a lot of his biggest backers. Sidney Powell still likes him. Lynn Wood's fighting for him, but others are slowly starting to drop away, including one who's been a staunch defender of him for some time. That is televangelist Pat Robertson, who still is very influential among sort of a sector of America that I don't speak to. And so it doesn't have a lot of effect on my life, but for millions of Americans, he is still important. And so let's go to a little bit of one of his recent broadcasts where he talks about the ongoing challenges to the election.
All his talent and the ability to raise money and draw large crowds, the president still lives in an alternate reality. He really does. People say, well, he lies about this, that, and the other, but no, he isn't lying. To him, that's the truth. He had the biggest crowd on Inauguration Day. He had more people than ever. He was the most popular people. He saved NBC, but with The Apprentice, you go down the line of things that really aren't true, and people kept pointing to them. But because they loved him so much, and he was so strong for the evangelicals were with him all the way. But there was something about him that was good, that God placed him in that office for the time. He's done a marvelous job for the economy. But at the same time, he is very erratic, and he's fired people, and he's fought people, and he's insulted people, and it keeps going down the line. So it's a mixed bag. And I think it would be well to say, you've had your day, and it's time to move on.
Okay, so as someone just mentioned on Twitch, Anna, or you were talking earlier about goblins being out there. We found one. But anyway, so look, Pat Robertson, again, doesn't matter to me, doesn't affect my life, but there are a lot of people who trust him and believe that he is effectively a direct conduit to God himself. So if he's saying it's time for Trump to pack it in, could that possibly get through to people? Might that actually help continue American democracy?
No, he's going to get death threats. He and his family will get death threats. That's what will happen. It doesn't matter who the person is. Doesn't matter what their track record has been with the Republican Party. Doesn't matter if it was the most hardcore evangelical imaginable fundamentalist who otherwise was the darling of the Republican Party and Republican voters. None of that matters. All it takes is to have one mild criticism of Trump or to speak out against Trump in any way, and that person will deal with death threats and all sorts of crazy MAGA people who refuse to accept reality. And that's the situation that we're in. I mean, the Republican Party has become the party of Trump, and that's not gonna change. So it's something that, going back to a previous discussion we were having, John, it's something that I wish Joe Biden were more aware of, because I don't think that he's lying about how he thinks he can work with Republicans. I think he genuinely does think he can work with Republicans. But when he's thinking about the Republican Party and the Republican constituency, he's literally thinking about people like Bob Dole, right? He's thinking about, Reagan era Republicans, and the game has changed to the point where the most conservative Supreme Court in our nation's history is not conservative enough, because it would not carry out Donald Trump's attempts to dismantle our democratic process and steal the election. That's what we're dealing with.
Yeah, and William Barr isn't sufficiently loyal to Trump because he won't seize the voting machines after all that he's done. Yeah, I do wonder if there's anyone that can get through, and I largely agree. I feel like no matter how in with the right you've been, you're gonna find out it's not enough when you finally turn on Trump by acknowledging reality. That's all it takes. I think that there's a chance with Pat Robertson because of that religious connection. Maybe there are people who've been watching Pat Robertson for 130 years on TV. Like they've been there. They're the Century Plus Club. But we'll see. When Pence, in a couple of weeks, when he has to preside over the actual vote, if he certifies that, he better have protection at that point. I really do worry about their willingness to throw everyone to the wolves, and Pat Robertson might be experiencing a little bit of that. Anyway, let's change it up. Let's talk about a very different area. I was pretty shocked when I saw this news, so let's turn to this now. Sorry, I threw the producers for a loop. The good news out there in the pandemic is that there is a vaccine and it is being shipped around. But the question is going to be how fast and how soon will you actually have access to it? So I saw a story that really blew my mind and reminded me that even after all of this, after 2020, I can still be naive apparently. Because the story talks about how President-elect Joe Biden's coronavirus advisory team has consulted with scientists and supply chain experts about whether he should invoke a wartime production law to help produce and administer more vaccines, according to two different advisors. So basically, this is about using the Defense Production Act, or DPA, which Trump used at one point to speed the production of PPE and components to test for the coronavirus. And the reason that this blows my mind is, how is it possible that they're not already doing this? Like, we have two vaccines have been approved now. One is already being distributed, one will be distributed soon. And we're not doing everything imaginable to produce as much of it as possible. We're just gonna be like, yeah, Pfizer, whatever you can make is cool. We'll take that. I mean, we're only losing like 2,000 to 3,000 plus people every single day. No, take your time, produce whatever you can in your own factories. It's important that you have control of this and especially the profits. But that's actually what's going on. Like, they're considering using it. That's a plus, since Trump clearly isn't going to, even though he really wants you to believe that the vaccine is all due to him. This would be one way of at least having that be a little bit accurate. But Anna, as of right now, they're just letting private industry make it on the pace that they want. Not like we have so many other areas where vaccines are produced for other things that in theory could be switched over to used for this. But they're still considering that as like a hypothetical.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to get to a point where we accept the fact that the system is working the way that it's supposed to work. This is not the bug, this is the feature. This is capitalism, which means profits over people. And it's gonna continue working out this way. I mean, even in countries there's still that still have private industry, like European Union countries, for instance, they have at least enough regulations in place to check the influence of private industry or the vested interests of private industry. In the United States, we've gone in a completely different direction. And I don't even really think that you can reform a system like this effectively for the long haul, as long as there's a profit motive involved in things like our healthcare system, for instance. Private industry will find a way to claw back regulations that are in the best interests of people. But there are certain things that should not be commodified. Healthcare is a human right, it should not be commodified, period. And so what we're seeing here, again, I really want to emphasize, is a system that's working the exact way that it is supposed to work. It values profits over people. It will continue to value profits over people, which is why, again, certain things like healthcare, like the prison system, like education, water, things like that should not be commodified. But alas, here we are, life-saving drugs, water at this point, which is now being traded in the in the stock market. All of these things that we need for survival have been commodified, traded for profit, and that opens it up to all sorts of abuse that leads to more human lives being lost.
Yeah, 100%. That water thing was one of the most shocking bits of news of the past few weeks. Hopefully he'll do it. I think, look, it's like, what are we gonna lose in the next 4 months? Are we hoping we're only gonna lose 150,000 people? Are we hoping we'll only lose 200,000 people? Like, if there was a product that needed to be seized to stop the Nazis from killing hundreds of thousands of Americans, I like to think they'd do it. No, if I was in charge, you take it, you give Pfizer whatever, $2 billion, $5 billion, whatever, you came up with it, good, here's your payment. And now we're going to be using every factory that is capable of being reconfigured to produce more vaccine and whatever, all down the supply chain. They're worried about possible losing shortages of certain components that will go into it. Okay, then we're also going to take control of that. And we're gonna make sure that we get people vaccinated as quick as possible. And if it's 1 day quicker than it would by leaving it up to them, good, we'll save thousands of Americans. If it's a week quicker, a month quicker, we can save tens of thousands of lives. We should 100% do that. Pfizer has already been paid. They're gonna make tons of money. Beyond that, I don't care about them. I care about the families that are gonna be destroyed by dragging our heels. And supposedly, based on what I'm seeing, Biden's aides, one of the things that's driving them is the belief that expectations about how fast people are gonna be vaccinated are being increased by Trump talking up the prevalence of the vaccine, how common it is. And if they don't actually take control of the process, they won't be able to meet the timelines that are being talked about right now, and they'll be blamed if they don't do it quick enough. Well, I think they 100% will. The Republicans, even Fox News is gonna be talking about how slow the vaccination is going, even as every night they do segments about how you shouldn't get vaccinated because Bill Gates put stuff in it. So yeah, he should very much be worried about that. And if this is one way to get out in front of it on day one, the DPA should be invoked. They should produce it as fast as possible. We'll see if they actually
do. Absolutely.
Now, I want to talk briefly about a disagreement that's going on right now between two members of the squad having to do with the vaccines. Now, what we're talking about is not the way it's being presented on social media. I took a screenshot of just a few of the ways this dispute is being talked about. Take a look at this. AOC runs afoul of Ilhan Omar. Ilhan Omar slams lawmakers like AOC. Or just Representative Omar slams AOC. Hey, what do you know? When you click on this, it's actually not true. She doesn't say anything in particular about AOC, and I'm sure that they're on very good terms. But there is a disagreement about personally getting vaccinated at this point, with Representative Omar saying on Twitter, it would make sense if it was age, but unfortunately it's of importance and it's shameful. This is in response to a question about whether political leaders should get the vaccine before others. She says, we are not more important than frontline workers, teachers, etc., who are making sacrifices every day, which is why I won't take it. People who need it most should get it, full stop. So she believes that it's important to sort of, even though it's obviously only one dose that, or two, I guess, in the long term that Ilhan Omar would need, she doesn't want to take it, symbolically saying we're not more important than them. On the other side, you have people like Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who say that because of people like, in this particular tweet, she's responding to Rand Paul, who have undermined public faith in science, the CDC, and are already doing it with the vaccine. She believes that getting publicly vaccinated could help to raise the percentage of Americans who are actually willing to do it at all. This is being presented by, I would say, dishonest clickbaity media as a personal fight between the two when it has nothing to do with that. It's very much about what message do we want to send. Anna, what do you think about those two different messages?
Well, I mean, I know that there's pressure to take a side, but I'm actually not going to because both of them make really great points. And so I really value and commend Ilhan Omar's message here because I think she's right. What we're seeing across the board in stories that we've covered on the Young Turks, for instance, you'll see even within a hospital, administrators and people who get to work from home, people in positions of power within Stanford's medical center, they'll get vaccinated before their frontline workers and residents get vaccinated. And so that's a huge issue because I think it is important to prioritize people who are most at risk of contracting and suffering the consequences of this virus. With that said, though, I do also agree with Representative Ocasio-Cortez because there are many people who are doubtful about the safety and efficacy of the vaccine because of intentional disinformation campaigns by conservatives. And so AOC has a lot of influence. People look to her, they trust her. If they see her taking the vaccine and they see that she's fine and healthy, I think that it will ease some nerves, including, by the way, my own. Because remember, they came up with this vaccine pretty quickly. And it's not just that they developed it quickly, it's just that we have a president who has politicized this entire process and people don't trust Trump. So with all of that said, I do think that AOC makes a good point. If she were one of these lawmakers who engaged in the disinformation campaign, then I would say, oh, well, much like Marco Rubio, by the way, who minimized and downplayed the severity of the virus, he went and got vaccinated. And my response to that was, oh, well, you thought this was just a joke. And then you go off and get vaccinated. Why? Why'd you do that? right? But that's not what's going on with AOC. AOC is always taking it seriously. She's always tried to share relevant and pertinent information. And so again, I'm not really gonna take a side because I think they both make really good points here.
Yeah, I like Representative Omar's point. I don't think that our political leaders are more important on some objective level than nurses and doctors and that sort of thing. I would say there are other groups that are getting, as you pointed out, preferential access to this. And as a class, we did a story yesterday about how the rich are trying to sort of jump the line. And almost every one of the examples in the story was that they weren't able to. I have no faith in that whatsoever. I think that there ain't a billionaire in the country that hasn't already been vaccinated. I have a feeling that bothers me much more than some Congress people, because again, at the end of the day, it's a few hundred people basically. It's not cutting significantly into the number of vaccines. And someone like Representative Omar has tried every step of the way to get people to take it seriously and to give people aid because so many people haven't taken it seriously. AOC at least as much so. So I don't have a problem with them getting access to it. It bothers me personally to see people like, theoretically Rand Paul or Ted Cruz, governors like DeSantis, the idea of them getting access to it, or Scott Atlas, members of Fox News that have gotten tens of thousands of people killed. The idea of them having access to it before nurses and doctors and people in nursing homes and things like that really does bother me. That said, I think that it is important that we demonstrate, assuming that it is safe, and I believe, the AOC is not going to be injecting something in her body that she hasn't gotten good information about. It's really important. She has like 11 million followers on Twitter. She has lots of followers on Instagram. And I would say that her followers skew into groups that are less likely to actually want to get this. Like if we jump ahead a bit, we've got a breakdown of how likely people are to get the Pfizer vaccine. And you can see that the percent saying very likely is lower and lower the younger the person is. And it's lower for women than it is for men. And so it is possible that someone like an AOC or others could help get not just to more people to make sure that they're likely to get it, but specifically the groups that already have lower faith in it. There's gaps in terms of racial demographics as well. Overall, it's like 70% of Democrats say that they're likely to get it, and only 50% of Republicans. And the thing is, according to people like Dr. Fauci, we need 75 to 85% of the population to get it to help significantly cut down the spread of COVID, and especially for those who can't be vaccinated. Because remember, there are always going to be some people who cannot get this and will not be protected by it. So I think that I like both of the messages. They're both following their values, but I really do hope that in the end, everyone gets access to it as fast as possible, and as many people as possible choose to actually get it.
Yeah, definitely. And my good friend Michael Brooks would always say, he'd always use the word dialectic when talking about certain issues. And I think that this kind of applies to this conversation because both points are true. And we got to be comfortable with these 2 points, existing, next to one another and making a lot of sense. So Representative Omar, Representative Ocasio-Cortez, I know that they're putting forth their best intentions in the arguments that they're making, and I think they're both right.
No, that's lame. That's never gonna sell on the internet. You choose one and we kick the other out of Congress. Choose Omar, 2 congresswomen enter, 1 congresswoman leave. That's the way it works.
Well, I mean, it goes back to your point though, John, that the way that it's being presented online with various outlets intentionally instigates some sort of conflict between the two, right? Because it's all about selling conflict that doesn't even need to exist. There is no conflict here. Both women are making good points. And I think that it is a good idea for AOC to get vaccinated if it's part of a campaign to encourage people to get vaccinated. Again, if she had been one of these lawmakers who downplayed the severity of the virus and spread disinformation, I would have a different take, but that's not the case with AOC.
Yeah. And also, like, God help us if AOC got COVID. I have very few things that are actually keeping me on this planet. Anyway, okay, let's move now to a few comments from the audience before we go to our last story, which will be a lighter, funner one, sort of. Anyway, Kaiseki says, hey John, want you to know I received both notifications. I also would like to claim 9-tailed dragon. Love you, Anna. John, you're also cool. Thanks, Kaiseki, I appreciate that. We're trying to get an idea of how many people actually get the notification when we go live, and it seems distressingly low. But let's see. Stephanie Rampley says, I tested positive for COVID-19 yesterday, workplace exposure. Didn't quite make it to the vaccine on time. I feel awful and am on self-quarantine. Please cancel your Xmas plans, if not with immediate family. Totally. And Stephanie, I hope that you have as low symptoms as possible and you recover quickly. But yes, everyone, don't give your family the gift of COVID this Christmas. Stay home. Don't do it. You can see them later, assuming you don't see them now. Anyway, Courtney Morrison sent us in a super chat saying, Anna, the way you crush on Christian fills me with joy. Women being comfortable objectifying their partners in a playful way is a thing to look up to.
Yeah. No, I mean, look, and for anyone who might be uncomfortable with like he's my husband. I'm not. Yes, I know my comments objectify him, but I'm married to him because he's a great person and keeps me grounded, honestly. Like I don't know, I would be insane with like everything going on right now without his support. So, and yeah, he's really sexy. He's got that Cuban ass. Is that inappropriate? I don't think I'm allowed to say that.
No, but no.
I know. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's her mistake and her bad, and she's sorry for that. Okay. Stone Eagle Dragon says Christian needs to be salt shaker dragon. I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm uncomfortable. Or steel beef dragon from John. Well, to be clear, I'm beyond beef dragon. I'm trying to keep it progressive here, but he could be beef dragon. Sure, why not? Okay, let's see. Stefanik says, Anna, I love carpentry too, and fixing up my house. I'm currently putting new floors in my kitchen, even though it's a man's job. That's
nice.
Awesome.
I love it. I love it so much. Cool. No, it's so, nothing feels better. It's like the most fulfilling thing when you do something on your own. Like it's so expensive to call someone to like install a sink fixture, like a faucet. So expensive to install a light fixture. But it's not that hard to learn, guys. Like, and it's like the best feeling once you do it on your own and it works. I mean, yeah. Christian did do some plumbing in our bathroom over the weekend, and there were
Anna, mistakes. Enough with the objectifying.
Literal plumbing. I'm not making any innuendo here. But like you learn. That's the great part. You make mistakes, but you learn.
Yeah. I will probably never own a house because houses in LA are insanely expensive. But if I ever did, I like the idea of being able to like fix things up. I do that a little bit in my apartment, but it feels so pointless in an apartment. Like it ain't mine. Why am I going to all this trouble? But in a house, I'd like to improve it if I ever get one, which I probably never will. Okay, a few more super chats. Melissa A says, I love how giddy Anna gets about her hubby. I feel the same way about my guy. Get it, girl. Nice. Randall Flagg says, the prime goal of government is to protect the minority of the opulent from the majority. Lyrics by Client song Authority. From the beginning of our government wasn't meant for us. Man, the super chats can go from one direction to the other really fast there. That was a super serious one after the get it girl. But thank you for the super chat. Scott Johnson says, hey John, my brother's roommate has COVID and is quarantining in their apartment, and my parents are still forcing my brother to celebrate Christmas with them despite the risks. I'm leaving town. Good call. Good call. Let's see. Umberto says, if Santa Claus turned out to be real, what would you request this year? Jeez, ride on the sleigh would be pretty sweet. I don't know. 4K TV. I've been meaning to make the jump at some point. Anna, what would you ask Santa for this year?
Kind
of saw.
I've kind of gotten to a point where I really don't like gifts. Like I appreciate them, but I don't need anything. I don't need anything. Like I'm happy. I have everything I need. What I really want is people in my life to plan something with me, an experience with me. Obviously we're in COVID time, so that's difficult, but like even planning an outdoor socially distanced and masked hike, that means a lot more to me than like anything anyone can actually give me material wise.
Yeah.
Like I'm very lucky and fortunate, so I don't want people spending their money on me.
I got that, yeah. Totally unrelated. I've been meaning to ask, hey, do you want to do a hike soon?
Yeah, we do a hike. Come on, I would love that.
That'd be cool.
I would love that. I did one with Francesca about 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was nice.
We could get our dogs together. That'd be great. Okay, and finally in the super chat, Songs of Sovereignty says Mele Kalikimaka from Sovereignty Dragon. Thank you for that, I appreciate that. Okay, over on Twitch, The Bugger resubscribed for 2 months. Cody on Kenobi resubscribed for 5 months and says, hey, Dragon Squad. Thank you for that. Progressive NCO gifted a sub, as did Trimo Batiki. Dejati gifted 5. Thank you very much for that, all of you. Also wanted to say hello to our new YouTube members, including Starchild, Jeff Nicholson, and Lab Knights, both of whom joined at tier 2, which means they get access to the top 10 garbage people of the week that I recorded with Francesca yesterday, and all of our Monday top 10 lists going forward. And also welcome Lynn Brown, Richie Johnson, and Ophelia Rose. Thank you for becoming members of our YouTube channel. And with that, Anna, why don't we move into our last story?
Let's do it.
We've been trying to get people to wear masks for months now, and regular masks just don't seem to do it for some people, which has been leading to some innovation, some of which maybe has been helpful, and others have been this maybe.
Introducing BLANC, a full cover face mask that protects your eyes, nose, and mouth. Thanks to advanced replaceable filters, you're breathing clean air. Midline magnets gently fix BLANC over the face. BLANC adjusts to individual anatomical features of the face and head, making for a supremely comfortable fit. BLANC is 1,000 masks in one. Its front panel is changeable with any material, color, and texture, depending on the message you put out there. Choose your BLANC.
Okay. So that is a Kickstarter mask that is now ongoing. It has, as of right now, raised $320,000. And they put out that video. They've got promotional photos like this, the only mask for an uncertain future. But is it though? Is it the only mask for an uncertain future? Anna, what do you think about BLANC? It's $80, by the way.
Yeah, no, more. I'm not interested in any of this. Like 0% interest in any of this. Like, yeah, what a great time to capitalize off of the tragic situation that so many people are in. I mean, yeah, because people need more junk. Like, let's use this as an opportunity to create and sell more junk. Just wasteful nonsense. Just wear a regular mask and move on with your life, really. Like, what are you doing? Okay, I hate all of this. I hate junk. I hate junk. Like, I hate consumerism. I hate that we're like constantly being pressured by mass media and the messaging to just buy more stuff. We're not good enough. A regular mask isn't good enough. You're not looking cool enough with the mask. Like, just I hate all of this. Like, I don't know. I've become pretty, I guess, a little bit of a Grinch when it comes to the overwhelming consumerism in this country. We don't need fancy masks. We need effective masks. We need masks that protect us and those around us from this pandemic. We don't need to engage in more consumerism. We don't need to compile more, mountains of junk in our homes. Like, let's just please be smart about this. I don't know why I'm being like super salty about this, but yeah.
Well, you're obligated to. You're the Salt Dragon. What if they had a Grinch front panel for the BLANC? What about that then, Grinchy? No. Okay, so what you just saw from Anna was perfectly reasonable, knee-jerk reaction, but now we try to sell her with ad copy like this: the anonymous hero or the secret villain. Everyone wants to know who the man behind the mask is. Be bold, no, they don't. Shroud yourself in mystery, and show the world you don't follow the status quo. Is that really what people are gonna think? Does everyone want to know the man behind the mask? Or does everyone want to avoid learning anything more about the man behind the mask?
Bingo.
Now,
bingo.
That said, Anna, it's very dumb and it's too expensive. And also, by the way, if the problem is that too many people don't wear masks, okay, when I think of literally everyone over the past 8 months or so that I've heard express any opposition to wearing a mask, there ain't a damn one in that group that would be caught dead wearing a BLANC. They don't want to wear this. You think they're gonna wear this? They're gonna become half robot? No, they don't want to wear cloth. They're not becoming BB-8. Like, it's just not gonna happen. That said, I kind of want one. Yeah. I'm not gonna buy it. But if they sent me one, I would wear it in my house. I can't wear it outdoors, but I would wear it in my house, and I would think that it was pretty cool.
Like, you love that weird sci-fi stuff. So I get, like, it's very on brand for you, and I get it. So it's not like I'm gonna be overly judgmental if you spend money on a mask like that. I just think it's dumb. It's not for me. Yeah. Obviously, they're not marketing to people like me, so who cares? But like, my problem is like the nonstop marketing. I'll give you an example of a mask that was marketed to me.
What's that?
On social media and everything. Just, you're stylish and you like to look good. So here's a mask that's made of like black lace, and it's like, I don't want a black lace mask. I just want to wear a mask that works, and I don't want to spend too much money on it. Honestly, I just use the disposable, surgical masks, and I'm always home anyway. So the only time I use it is when I go out for a run, and it's fine. It works perfectly fine, and we can move on with our lives. We don't need to turn this into a weird, fashion statement.
Capitalist America, we have to. One final attempt to win you over. If they offered a front panel made out of a fine polished mahogany, would that possibly sway you?
Will it smell of rich mahogany? Because
so rich, rich.
I would wear it as I'm in my library, which smells, which has many leather-bound books.
Okay, good. Okay, so BLANC, that's your option. Maybe a stretch goal. Rich mahogany, get it in there. Anyway, Ana Kasparian, as always, thank you not only for joining us, but for humoring me. I appreciate you giving me a little bit of your time.
I love you, John. I love the show, love your audience, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Oh, and by the way, so you're doing the main show today, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so everyone, you can
catch her. Cenk. Yeah, we go live at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern. We switched back over to a 2-hour show, so we have a lot of pretty giant stories in the rundown today. You don't want to miss it.
Awesome. And tomorrow, I'm going to be doing the Young Turks with Ana Kasparian as well to close out the year. For now, though, Ana, thank you. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody, I'm going to read just a few more of your comments before we close this thing out. Let's see. Bart says, with a BLANC mask, now everyone can be a member of Daft Punk or a Mandalorian. John, if you wear this mask around the house, I will question our friendship. Don't make me do that. Yeah. If they made one that looked like the Mandalorian, I mean, I'm only so strong. How can I not wear that? This is the way I've just sketched out for you, BLANC. Anyway, let's see. Bernie the Kiwi Bird in the super chat said, Kiwi Dragon, Pa, and Salt Dragon stuck under tier 4 in London. European borders closed, but UK-US flights not blocked as far as I know. But where the mutated COVID strain still? Merry Christmas? Yeah, the mutated strain making it a little bit less merry. Sorry for everything that's going on around London. Okay, Ferret Queen says, this June I'm walking down the aisle to a revamp of the ending theme to the Genesis version of Ghouls and Ghosts, my favorite game that I can beat in 30 minutes despite it being notoriously difficult. I've never beaten that, but that is very cool. Friends Meyer says, Trump is basically the emperor who got new clothes, the election, and the Republican Party, for the most part, continuing to tell him he is dressed in fine threads. Right-wing TV is doing it too. That is a great analogy. Minimal Chaos says, hey, John and Ana, you make my day complete. I would like to claim Chaos Dragon, please, if it's available. You'll have to check on the link that's available at the TYT Discord. It is possible that it still is. JM says, if they want to play that game, why not look into Trump's daughter/wife deals in Azerbaijan that funneled money to Iranian National Guard through a hotel project that was headed by guess who, Soleimani, or Kushner's $600 million payday? It is possible that maybe bringing all this up is designed to produce some sort of truce. I don't know. Look, I personally believe if any Trump family members committed crimes, which they definitely did, they should be investigated. If Hunter did something, then sure, he ain't special. Send him to jail too. I really don't care. I don't care. I don't know any of them. They're not my family members. But that said, it also seems like it's just strike back. Nicole Nowicki calls for a John, Ana, and JR episode of TDR. That sounds like that'd be a lot of fun, Nicole. Maybe someday that can happen. Have we ever had a 3-person TDR? I don't think we have. Candace Thunder says, some of these people will literally have to watch someone they love suffocate to death and suffer multi-organ failure before they take it seriously. It's horrifyingly sad. So many people are so selfish. Agreed, totally. Brianna Circus said, with all the crap in the world, you guys give me hope and knowledge. In turn, progressive power. Safe and happy holidays to all my dragon family. Love to John and Anna from Free Spirit Dragon Mama. Screw 2020. Thank you, Brianna. And definitely screw 2020. Okay, let's see. Over in Twitch, Goner in Paradise subscribed for 6 months and says happy anniversary. Been watching since 2012. Love you guys. That was actually my first year here at TYT. Thank you for resubscribing. Heather M subscribed for 3 months. Tizona for 3. Watercolor Dragon for 3 as well and says love being part of Dragon Squad. What happened 3 months ago? Everybody seems to have signed on then. But anyway, thank you for following us after all this. Hamby Plays Games says, Anna's reaction to John asking if she knows about Mandalorian reminds me of so many conversations in real life. Yeah, for me too, actually. Okay, Dragon Song, yes, he says Pepper Dragon for Christian because he's the pepper to Anna's salt and because he's hot. I don't know how anyone could fight against that. I think he has to be the Pepper Dragon. It looks like there's some people agreeing. Plumber Dragon? No, I don't know. I don't like it. Mick Dragon, that's pretty funny actually. She could possibly go for that. Anyway, thank you everybody for joining us today. We've still got one more show this week. J.R. Jackson's gonna be joining me tomorrow. And you know what? Despite the fact that we don't have a Friday, we're still gonna do a garbage person of the week. So I believe if you go to the community tab now, or at the very least later, you'll find your ability to vote for the community garbage person of the week. Maybe check back a little bit later. But anyway, we're gonna have some for you with JR, which should be a lot of fun. And until then, stay safe out there.